My lawyer wife cheated and tried to use her legal knowledge to screw me in the divorce. I found out she was committing notary fraud on the side. I reported her to the Bar Association. She was disbarred and works at a diner now. All right, Reddit. Buckle up because this one's a wild ride involving a cheating spouse, legal manipulation, and the most satisfying karma I've ever witnessed firsthand. Happened over the past 18 months, and I'm finally at a place where I can talk about it without wanting to punch a wall. My buddy told me this belongs on the internet. So here we are. I, 34 male, work as an industrial equipment inspector for a company that deals with manufacturing plants across the Midwest. Basically, I travel to factories and make sure their machinery isn't going to explode or kill someone. It's decent money, solid benefits, and I get to work independently most of the time, which suits me just fine. Started in this field right out of college with a mechanical engineering degree and worked my way up from entry-level technician to senior inspector over the past 12 years. The job requires a sharp eye for detail and zero tolerance for cutting corners. I spend my days examining conveyor systems, hydraulic presses, industrial robotics, and packaging equipment. Every inspection gets documented with photos, measurements, and compliance reports that could hold up in court if something goes wrong. One mistake on my end could mean someone loses a limb or worse, so I take the work seriously. The company trusts me because I've never signed off on anything questionable just to keep a client happy. My typical inspection day starts at 6 a.m. when I arrive at whatever plant I'm assigned to. First thing is reviewing the equipment maintenance logs and comparing them against manufacturer specifications. Then I'm climbing ladders, crawling under machinery, checking hydraulic pressure readings, measuring wear patterns on moving parts. Everything gets photographed from multiple angles with detailed notes about what I'm seeing and why it matters. By the end of the day, I've usually walked 5 or 6 miles around the plant floor and generated a 20-page report. The travel schedule means I'm on the road about 3 weeks out of every month, hitting different plants across Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. Usually gone Monday through Thursday, home for long weekends. It's not glamorous, but the pay is solid, and I genuinely enjoy the work. There's something satisfying about finding a potential failure point before it becomes a catastrophic problem. I met Rebecca 7 years ago through a mutual friend's wedding. She was 3 years into practicing family law, already making a name for herself at a mid-sized firm downtown. Smart as hell, confident, had this whole power professional thing going that honestly impressed me. She wore these perfectly tailored suits and could argue her way out of anything. I found that attractive at the time. Should have been my first warning sign. Our first conversation happened at the wedding reception. I was sitting at a table with a bunch of people I barely knew, doing the awkward small talk thing when Rebecca sat down next to me. She'd just come from the bar with some complicated drink that probably cost $15. We got to talking and somehow ended up discussing liability insurance of all things. Turned out she was representing a client in a workplace injury case and wanted to pick my brain about equipment safety standards. Most people's eyes glaze over when I talk about OSHA regulations and machinery compliance. Rebecca asked detailed questions and actually remembered what I said. She wanted to know about inspection protocols. What kind of documentation would hold up in court? How expert witnesses evaluate equipment failures. We talked for probably an hour about hydraulic press accidents and conveyor system malfunctions, while everyone else at our table was getting hammered and dancing to bad DJ music. We exchanged numbers that night. She texted me 3 days later asking if I wanted to grab coffee and continue the conversation about industrial safety standards. I thought she was joking, but she was dead serious. We met at this place downtown near her office. She brought a legal pad and took notes while I explained the difference between preventative maintenance and corrective maintenance. Looking back, I should have realized she was using me for free expert consultation, but at the time I thought it was cute that she found my boring job interesting. That coffee date turned into dinner the next week, then drinks at a wine bar the week after that. Then suddenly we were seeing each other twice a week, and I was spending weekends at her apartment. She lived in this nice high-rise downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and actual adult furniture, instead of the second-hand stuff most people our age had. The place looked like it came straight out of a home design magazine. Rebecca came from old money. Her dad, Gerald, ran some investment fund that managed retirement accounts for executives and professional athletes. Her mom, Catherine, sat on charity boards and hosted fundraising galas. They lived in this massive colonial in the suburbs with a 3-car garage, professionally landscaped everything, and a pool house that was bigger than most people's actual houses. Meeting them for the first time felt like stepping into a different tax bracket. Her childhood bedroom was still exactly how she'd left it when she went to college. Queen bed with an expensive mattress, matching furniture, built-in bookshelves full of hardcovers, and a walk-in closet. There were photos of her at various equestrian competitions throughout high school. Apparently, she'd been big into competitive horseback riding, which explained the trophies lining one shelf. The whole setup probably cost more than I'd made in my first year working. Despite the privileged background, Rebecca worked her tail off in law school. Top 10% of her class at Ohio State, law review editor, summer internships at major firms in Cleveland and Cincinnati. She actually earned her success instead of coasting on daddy's connections. That mattered to me because I grew up middle class, where nothing got handed to you. My parents were both public school teachers who saved for years just to afford family vacations. I paid for college with scholarships and part-time jobs fixing equipment at the university physical plant. Rebecca respected that hustle, or at least I thought she did at the time. We got married after dating for 2 years. Nothing crazy expensive. Her parents offered to pay for some elaborate affair at a country club with 300 guests and an open bar that would have cost more than a decent car. We both agreed to keep it reasonable. Ended up with about 80 guests. Nice venue at a historic inn outside Columbus. Decent catering that didn't break the bank. I thought we were on the same page about not needing flashy displays of wealth. Looking back, maybe she just didn't want to waste daddy's money on marrying someone she considered temporary. The wedding itself was actually pretty great. Perfect weather in early June, ceremony outdoors under these massive oak trees, reception in a restored barn that had been converted into an event space. Her family invited their usual crowd of lawyers and fund managers and charity board members. My family brought teachers and union workers and people who drove pickup trucks instead of BMWs. Two completely different worlds colliding. But it worked out fine. Everyone had fun, nobody caused drama, and we left for our honeymoon in the Florida Keys feeling like we'd started something real. First few years were solid. We bought a 3-bedroom ranch house in a decent neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown. Needed work but had good bones. Solid foundation, newer roof, updated electrical. Got it for under market value because the previous owners were divorcing and desperate to sell. Ironic considering how things ended up. Rebecca made partner at her firm faster than anyone in their history, just 6 years from associate to full partner. Usually takes 8 to 10 years if you're lucky. She billed crazy hours, won difficult cases, brought in new clients. The firm specialized in high net worth divorces and custody battles. She represented doctors, business owners, executives going through messy splits. Her billable rate went from $200 an hour to $450 an hour in the span of 3 years. I got promoted to senior inspector with a territory covering 5 states. Meant better pay, more responsibility, and unfortunately, more travel. But I liked the work, and my boss trusted me with the complex inspections that required extra attention. We were both climbing our respective ladders, and it felt like we were building something together. The house became our project. Spent weekends painting rooms every color Rebecca picked from those sample cards at Home Depot. Installed new light fixtures in every room because she hated the old ones. Argued about whether the kitchen needed a backsplash. She said yes. I said it was fine as is. She won, and we spent a Saturday tiling. Redid the master bathroom with new vanity, updated fixtures, and one of those rainfall shower heads that uses twice as much water as a normal shower, but feels amazing. Rebecca insisted on hiring professionals for the big stuff, but let me handle the smaller improvements. I built custom shelving for her home office using plans I found online and wood from the local hardware store. Took me 3 weekends, but they turned out perfect. Floor-to-ceiling shelves that fit her law books and case files. Refinished the deck out back, power washed and restained the whole thing, replaced some rotted boards. Built raised garden beds that Rebecca claimed she wanted to use for vegetables, but never actually planted anything in. She picked out furniture that actually matched instead of the random garbage I'd accumulated as a bachelor. Couch that coordinated with the rug, dining table with chairs that came as a set, bedroom furniture from an actual furniture store instead of wherever I'd found my old stuff. The place looked like adults lived there instead of college students with jobs. We fell into a routine. Friday date nights at different restaurants around town. We'd pick a new place every week and try to work our way through the local food scene. Sunday morning farmers market runs when I was home, buying fresh produce and homemade bread from vendors who set up downtown. Occasional weekend trips when our schedules aligned. Hocking Hills for hiking, Cleveland for museums, Chicago when we wanted a real city experience. Nothing Instagram-worthy, but it felt real and sustainable. Like we were building an actual life instead of performing one for social media. We talked about kids eventually, maybe in a few years once Rebecca felt more established at the firm. Discussed upgrading to a 4-bedroom house when that happened. Made plans for the future like you do when you think the future is actually going to happen the way you imagine it. Rebecca's work schedule got brutal after she made partner. 60-hour weeks minimum, sometimes 80 during big cases. She'd come home after I was already in bed and leave before I woke up. Weekends disappeared into depositions, client meetings, and court prep. I understood. She'd worked toward this her entire career. Making partner at a law firm is basically like reaching the end boss in a video game. The work doesn't get easier, it just gets more important, and the stakes get higher. Didn't love it, but I got it. My job required travel and long days too. Sometimes I'd be at a plant until 8 p.m. finishing an inspection that turned up more problems than expected. She understood my schedule, so I tried to understand hers. The distance grew slowly. She stopped asking about my day, stopped planning date nights, stopped initiating anything that wasn't on her meticulously organized calendar. When I'd suggest dinner or a movie, she'd say she was too tired or had work to finish. Fair enough, except she somehow had energy for happy hours with colleagues and networking events. The intimacy dried up completely. I'm not just talking physical stuff, though that disappeared too. I'm talking about those little moments of connection. Morning coffee together, quick texts during the day, falling asleep watching TV on the couch. All of it gone. She started sleeping in the guest room during the week, claiming my early morning alarm for work trips disturbed her sleep schedule. I travel for work about 40% of the time, 3 or 4 days on the road, then home for a week or two, depending on what inspections get scheduled. My schedule's been consistent for years. I send her my travel calendar at the beginning of each month. She knew exactly when I'd be gone and when I'd be home. Looking back, that predictability probably made her life a lot easier when she decided to start messing around. About 18 months ago, I noticed some changes. She started hitting the gym at 5 a.m. before work, got a new hairstyle from some expensive salon, updated her entire wardrobe, bought perfume that cost more per ounce than gold. At first, I thought maybe she was just taking better care of herself with the stress of work. Didn't occur to me she was dolling herself up for someone else. Then came the phone behavior. Always face down on the table. Always taking it to the bathroom. Changed her password without mentioning it. Used to be our wedding anniversary. When I asked about it casually, she said the firm required new security protocols for client confidentiality, plausible enough that I didn't push it. She started working late more often, coming home at 9 or 10 p.m. with wet hair smelling like fancy shampoo. Said the firm installed a gym and locker room for partners to use? Sure, makes sense. Except I'd visited her office before for lunch meetings and never noticed any gym. When I mentioned swinging by to grab dinner with her one night, she got weirdly defensive. She started mentioning Grant more frequently. Grant from the competing law firm. Grant who went to the same law school. Grant. The name started making me irrationally annoyed just from hearing it so much. But I'm not usually the jealous type. People have colleagues they get along with. Except something felt fundamentally wrong, and I couldn't quite articulate what it was. The real kicker came when I got home early from a site inspection that got canceled. This was about 14 months ago, middle of a Wednesday afternoon around 2 p.m. Was supposed to be at a plant in Michigan, running a 3-day inspection on their new packaging line. Got there Tuesday morning and found out the equipment hadn't even been installed yet. Some delay with the shipping company meant the machinery was sitting at a dock in Cleveland instead of on the factory floor where it was supposed to be. Plant manager was pissed, but what could we do? Rescheduled for the following month. I called my boss, updated him on the situation, and headed home. 4-hour drive from Flint back to Columbus. Listened to podcasts the whole way, stopped once for gas and a sandwich, pulled into my driveway around 2:15 p.m. on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon, thinking I'd surprise Rebecca with an early return. My truck's in the driveway and I walk into my own house through the garage like I always do. Set my inspection bag down by the door. That's when I see them. Men's dress shoes by the front entrance that definitely aren't mine. Expensive leather Oxfords. Probably Italian. Too small to be mine by at least 2 sizes. Just sitting there on the mat like they owned the place. Like whoever kicked them off felt comfortable enough in my house to leave his shoes lying around. I stood in the entryway for a solid minute trying to process what I was seeing. My brain went through every possible explanation. Maybe Rebecca invited a colleague over to work on a case. Maybe it's her brother, though he lives 2 states away. Maybe it's a delivery guy, though, that makes 0 sense. Every explanation sounded stupid even as I thought it. Heard voices upstairs. Laughter. My wife's laugh, the one I hadn't heard directed at me in months. Then more voices, talking quietly, then silence. That specific kind of silence that happens when people who are doing something they shouldn't be doing suddenly realize they might get caught. Like the air pressure changed in the entire house. Walked upstairs. Each step felt like it took an hour. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, pretend I never came home, preserve whatever illusion of a marriage we still had. The other part of me needed to know for sure. Needed to see it with my own eyes instead of spending the rest of my life wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Got to the master bedroom door. It was closed but not locked. Opened it. There's Rebecca scrambling to button her blouse, her hair a mess, her face flushed. And there's some guy I'd never seen before trying to locate his pants while wearing nothing but boxer briefs and dress socks. Both of them frozen like deer in headlights. Like if they stayed perfectly still, maybe I'd mistake them for furniture and leave. The guy looked about my age, maybe slightly younger, fit, well-groomed, wearing one of those expensive automatic watches that cost more than most people's cars. Rolex or Omega or some other brand I'd never be able to afford. Had that whole slick corporate look that probably played well in conference rooms and closing arguments. The kind of guy who definitely uses the word synergy unironically. This isn't what it looks like, Rebecca says. Classic opening line. Like there's some other explanation for why there's a half-naked stranger in our bedroom at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. I just stood there looking at both of them. Didn't yell, didn't grab him, didn't punch anybody. Just stared. My inspection training kicked in. Observe, document, assess, report. Emotions came later. Right now, I was gathering data. Pretty sure it's exactly what it looks like, I said. Voice calm. Flat. Like I was discussing machinery specifications instead of watching my marriage explode in real time. The guy, later found out his name was Grant, which explained so much, tried to do the whole man-to-man routine. Extended his hand like we were meeting at a networking event, instead of him standing in my bedroom wearing my wife's shame. Look, I think we should all sit down and talk about this like adults. I looked at his extended hand, looked at his face, looked at Rebecca, who'd managed to button her shirt, but was now just standing there like a malfunctioning robot. Looked back at Grant. Get out of my house, I said. Calm, quiet. But something in my tone made it clear this wasn't a negotiation. Maybe it was the complete lack of emotion in my voice. Maybe it was the look on my face. But Grant grabbed his stuff and basically sprinted down the stairs like the building was on fire. Heard the front door slam. Heard a car start in the driveway. Heard tires squeal slightly as he peeled out of the neighborhood. Then silence again. Just me and Rebecca standing in what used to be our bedroom, looking at each other across about 10 feet of carpet that felt like the Grand Canyon. Rebecca went into full lawyer mode immediately. Didn't cry, didn't apologize, went straight into damage control presentation mode. Started rattling off explanations about how the marriage had been struggling for months, how she'd been unhappy, how we'd grown apart, like she was presenting a case to a jury, instead of explaining why there was a strange dude half naked in our bedroom on a Wednesday afternoon. The words came out smooth and practiced, like she'd rehearsed this speech. Probably had. She's a family lawyer. She's seen 1,000 of these conversations. She knew the script, hit all the talking points. Emotional distance, different priorities, nobody's fault really, just grew apart. Made it sound reasonable and inevitable instead of what it actually was, which was her choosing to blow up our marriage because she wanted to hook up with some corporate douchebag. How long? I asked. Cut right through her monologue. She hesitated. First time she looked actually uncomfortable instead of just annoyed that I wasn't playing along with her narrative. That's not important right now. What's important is that we figure out how to move forward in a way that's fair to both of us. How? Long. I repeated each word separately. She sighed like I was being unreasonable by wanting basic information. Like I was the one making this difficult. 6 months. But Sam, you have to understand. You're never home. You're always traveling for work. I got lonely and Grant was there and I held up my hand. Stop. Just stop. 6 months. Half a year of lying. Half a year of coming home to me and pretending everything was fine while she was sleeping with someone else. Half a year of me thinking we just needed to work on communication, when actually she was busy working on destroying everything we'd built. I want a divorce, I said. Simple. Direct. No room for negotiation. She actually looked relieved, like she'd been worried I'd fight for the marriage, or beg her to stay or make some dramatic scene. I think that's the right call. And Sam, I want you to know that I'll make this as easy as possible. I'll be fair about everything. That sentence right there should have set off every alarm in my head, but I was too angry and humiliated and shocked to process it properly. When a lawyer who just got caught cheating promises to be fair, what they mean is they're going to use every trick in the book to get what they want while making you think you're getting a good deal. Here's the thing about my job. I document everything. Photos, notes, timestamps, detailed observations. It's how I protect myself from liability. You miss one detail on an inspection and someone can sue you, or worse, someone gets hurt. That habit bleeds into my personal life, whether I mean it or not. I'd been documenting Rebecca's weird behavior for about 2 months, without really knowing why. Started when I noticed the credit card statements didn't match her explanations. She'd say she was working late at the office, but there'd be charges from restaurants across town. Took screenshots of her changed location sharing settings. She turned hers off in late November. Said it was draining her battery. Photographed credit card statements showing charges at hotels during times she claimed to be working late. Not seedy motels. Nice places downtown with room service charges. Collected receipts from various places that didn't match her stories. Little things that individually seemed explainable but together formed a pretty clear picture. Checked into a budget motel that night. Called my brother Eric around 10 p.m. He's a project manager for a commercial construction outfit. I just said, Rebecca cheated. Found her with some guy this afternoon. I need advice. Dead silence for about 5 seconds. Then, holy shit, are you okay? Eric's immediate response. Don't sign anything without reading it 3 times and having someone else look at it. She's a lawyer. She's going to lawyer the hell out of you. Next morning, I called out sick from work. Spent 2 hours researching divorce attorneys in Columbus who specialized in cases involving legal professionals. Found a guy named Robert Chen who'd been practicing family law for 30 years. Called his office at 9 a.m. Explained my situation. Wife is a family lawyer. Caught her cheating yesterday. She's already talking divorce. Got an emergency consultation that afternoon. Robert's office was in an older building downtown. Nothing fancy. But the guy himself? Sharp as hell. Mid-50s, completely bald, wearing reading glasses. Had this demeanor like he'd seen every trick in the book twice. Let me guess, Robert said after I finished. She's already got paperwork drawn up and is pushing for a quick, uncontested divorce? Haven't heard from her yet today besides a text asking when I'd be coming back for my things. He leaned back in his chair. You will. Probably within 48 hours. She's going to present it as the mature, reasonable option. Keep things amicable. Avoid dragging it out. Save money on legal fees. But what she means is she wants you to roll over so she can get what she wants without a fight. Lawyers who get divorced either handle it professionally or they use every weapon in their arsenal. Your wife sounds like the second type. Made sense. I wrote him a retainer check. Walked out feeling like at least I had someone in my corner who knew the game Rebecca was about to play. Right on schedule, Rebecca texted that afternoon. Said she'd had her firm draw up divorce papers, and we could meet to discuss terms. She wanted to keep things amicable and straightforward to avoid dragging it out. Translation. She wanted me to roll over so she could get what she wanted without a fight. I forwarded the message to Robert. His response was one word. Yep. The papers arrived 3 days later via courier. Robert went through them with a fine-tooth comb while I sat there trying not to have a stroke. He kept shaking his head and making notes. After 20 minutes, he looked up. She wants the house, both cars, 60% of your retirement accounts, and she's claiming you owe her spousal support based on her projected lost earnings from the emotional distress of the divorce. What? Oh, it gets better. She's also claiming she made career sacrifices to support your travel schedule and therefore deserves compensation for those sacrifices. And there's a clause here that would prevent you from disclosing details of the marriage or divorce to anyone, including on social media. Can she do that? She can try. Will it hold up? Probably not most of it, but she's banking on you not wanting to fight it. She knows divorce litigation is expensive and time-consuming. She's hoping you'll just sign to make it go away. Not happening. I'd eat ramen for a year before I let her steamroll me like that. The next 6 weeks were brutal. Rebecca tried everything. Sent me these long emails about how hurt she was that I was being vindictive and stubborn by not accepting her terms. Had mutual friends reach out to convince me I was being unreasonable. Her mother even called me to say I was destroying Rebecca's reputation by dragging this out. Meanwhile, Robert was building our case. Subpoenaed phone records showing hundreds of texts and calls with Grant. Got credit card statements showing hotel rooms and expensive dinners. Documented every inconsistency in her claims about career sacrifices. Turned out those working late nights had been going on for way longer than 6 months. Rebecca didn't know I'd been keeping my own records. Every business trip I took, I had time-stamped documentation. Hotel check-ins, site inspection reports, GPS data from my work truck. I could prove exactly where I was and when. Meanwhile, her location history showed her at Grant's apartment complex at least twice a week for the past 8 months. So much for 6 months. The kicker was when Rebecca tried to claim I'd been emotionally abusive and neglectful. Said my work schedule made her feel abandoned and that my controlling behavior had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. Robert nearly laughed when he read that filing. She's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, he said. Classic lawyer move when they don't have a strong position. But here's where it gets really interesting. During discovery, Robert requested all of Rebecca's financial records. Standard procedure in divorce cases. She fought it hard, claiming attorney-client privilege and work product protection. Robert pushed back. Her personal finances weren't covered by those protections. The judge agreed and ordered her to produce the documents. When they finally came through, something caught my eye immediately. I've been reading technical documents and compliance reports for 15 years. I know what proper documentation looks like. Rebecca's notary logs were a mess. See, she'd gotten her notary commission a few years back. Said it was useful for her practice since a lot of documents need notarization. Made sense at the time. What didn't make sense was the logs I was looking at now. There were documents notarized on dates when I knew for a fact she'd been out of state at a legal conference. I remembered because I'd had to reschedule a work trip to watch our neighbor's dog while she was gone. I checked my own calendar and work logs to confirm. She'd notarized 6 documents in Ohio on a Thursday, when she was definitely in Florida. Then I noticed more inconsistencies. Documents notarized at times when she'd been in court. I could cross-reference those with public court records. Signatures that looked nothing like the photocopies of IDs attached to the notarization records. Pages notarized for people who, according to a quick social media search, hadn't even been in Ohio during the dates listed. This wasn't sloppy record-keeping. This was fraud. I spent a week going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Found at least 30 instances of what looked like false notarization over a 3-year period. Documents notarized when she was provably somewhere else. Signatures notarized without the person being present. Dates that didn't match up with anything. Took everything to Robert. He went pale. "Do you know what you're looking at here?" he asked. Notary fraud? Notary fraud that could get her disbarred. This isn't a small thing, Sam. This is serious criminal activity. If even half of these are what they look like, she's been falsifying legal documents for years. What do I do with it? Robert leaned back and thought for a long moment. Officially, as your divorce attorney, I have to tell you that weaponizing this information in the divorce proceedings would be ethically questionable and potentially illegal. It could look like extortion if you threaten to report her unless she agrees to favorable terms. And unofficially? Unofficially, you have an obligation as a citizen to report suspected fraud to the appropriate authorities. The Ohio State Bar Association has a disciplinary board that investigates these things. What you do with this information outside the context of our divorce case is entirely up to you. The way he said it made his meaning crystal clear. This wasn't about the divorce anymore. This was about the law. And Rebecca had been breaking it. I took a few days to think about it. Wasn't trying to be vindictive or petty, but the more I looked at those documents, the angrier I got. She'd been cheating on me for months, trying to screw me in the divorce, and the whole time she'd been committing fraud that could have hurt innocent people. Some of those documents were real estate transactions. Others were powers of attorney. One was an affidavit related to a child custody case. She'd been falsifying notarizations on documents that affected people's lives, their homes, their kids, all because she was too lazy or busy to do her job properly. Made copies of everything. Organized it into a clear timeline with supporting documentation. Wrote a detailed report explaining each instance and why it appeared fraudulent. Included my own documentation proving she was elsewhere during some of the notarizations. Took me about 40 hours of work over 2 weeks, but I made it airtight. Submitted it to the Ohio State Bar Association's disciplinary board with a cover letter explaining that I'd discovered this during divorce proceedings and felt obligated to report it. Didn't mention anything about wanting revenge or being angry about the affair. Just laid out the facts and let them speak for themselves. Then I waited. The Bar Association moves slowly. They have to investigate, interview witnesses, review records, give the attorney a chance to respond. Took about 4 months before I heard anything. During that time, the divorce was still grinding forward. Rebecca had backed off some of her more aggressive demands after Robert made it clear we had phone records and location data. Wasn't going to be the quick, easy divorce she'd hoped for. She had no idea I'd reported her. Why would she? The Bar Association doesn't announce investigations publicly. They keep everything confidential until there's a formal finding. Then one day I got a call from Robert. "Did you report Rebecca to the Bar Association?" he asked. "Yeah, a few months ago." "Why?" "Because she just filed an emergency motion to continue the divorce proceedings. Says she's under investigation and can't focus on the case right now. Her lawyer's asking for a 6-month delay." I couldn't help but smile. They're investigating her? According to the motion, yes. And from the sound of it, it's serious. She's lawyered up with a criminal defense attorney who specializes in bar complaints. The next few months were quiet on my end, but apparently hellish for Rebecca. I heard through mutual friends that she'd been suspended from practicing law pending the investigation. Her firm put her on leave. She hired a lawyer who cost more per hour than most people make in a day. I focused on work, moved into a rental house, started going to the gym consistently for the first time in years. Lost about 20 pounds and felt better than I had in ages. Wasn't even thinking about dating yet, but it felt good to have my life back under my own control. The Bar Association's findings came down about 8 months after I filed the complaint. They sustained almost every charge. Found that Rebecca had systematically falsified notarizations over a 3-year period, had notarized documents without witnesses present, had backdated notarizations, had notarized signatures for people she'd never met, the whole 9 yards. They disbarred her. Permanently. No chance of reinstatement. Also referred the matter to the county prosecutor for potential criminal charges, though I never heard if anything came of that. The divorce finally wrapped up 2 months later. With Rebecca's career in shambles and her bargaining position destroyed, she agreed to a much more reasonable settlement. I kept my retirement accounts, we split the proceeds from selling the house, and I got to keep my truck. No spousal support either direction. Rebecca's lawyer tried to argue that her disbarment wasn't relevant to the divorce settlement, but the judge disagreed. Hard to claim you need spousal support when you lost your law license through your own criminal behavior. Last I heard, Rebecca's working as a server at some diner outside Columbus. Her fancy law firm connections dried up pretty quick once word got around about why she was disbarred. Grant dumped her too. Apparently dating a disgraced lawyer wasn't as exciting as hooking up with a successful one. Her parents cut her off financially after the disbarment became public. Said she'd embarrassed the family. I ran into her about 6 months ago at a grocery store. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of her power suits. She saw me, turned bright red, and tried to duck down another aisle. I just kept shopping, wasn't about to make a scene or gloat. Seeing her like that was enough. One of the documents she'd falsified was for a family who needed a power of attorney notarized so their elderly father could get medical care while they were out of state. Because Rebecca backdated it incorrectly, there was a legal dispute that delayed his care by 3 weeks. The family had to hire a lawyer to sort it out. Could have been avoided if she'd just done her job properly. Another one involved a young couple buying their first house. Rebecca notarized loan documents without them present, forged their signatures. The title company caught it during the closing process, and the whole deal almost fell apart. The couple had to scramble to find another property before their rate lock expired. Caused them thousands in additional costs and months of stress. That's what gets me. She wasn't just cheating on me or lying to get a better divorce settlement. She was actively harming people who trusted her to do her job, all so she could save time or avoid inconvenience. The affair was personal betrayal. The fraud was professional betrayal of everyone who relied on her. Rebecca's parents cut her off completely. Her mom resigned from 2 charity boards because people kept asking about her daughter. Her dad told people at his country club that Rebecca was dealing with personal issues and refused to elaborate. They sold their house in the suburbs and moved to Florida. Didn't even tell Rebecca they were leaving until the moving truck showed up. I ran into her about 6 months ago at a grocery store. She was wearing a diner uniform with a name tag, hair pulled back, no makeup, looking about 10 years older than she actually was. She saw me, turned bright red, and tried to duck down another aisle. Ran into her again 2 months later at the same store. This time, she didn't run. Just gave me this look like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I nodded, kept walking. Had nothing to say to her. Found out later she's renting a studio apartment in a rough part of town. Drives a 15-year-old Honda with a dented bumper. Works doubles at the diner on weekends. Applied to be a paralegal at a few firms, but nobody would hire her once they ran a background check. One of her former clients sued her for malpractice related to the notary fraud. That case is still ongoing. Her insurance dropped her, so she's representing herself. Not going well from what I heard. The young couple whose house deal almost fell apart because of her forged notarizations? They ended up losing their dream home. The sellers went with another buyer. Couple had to rent for another year before they found something else. They're part of the class action suit against her now. The family with the elderly father she screwed over with the backdated power of attorney? He died before they could get the legal issues sorted out. They couldn't make medical decisions for him for 3 weeks because of her fraud. That's in the lawsuit, too. Rebecca tried to friend request me on social media about 4 months ago. Blocked her immediately. Her former firm hired someone to replace her. Young attorney, sharp, actually does her job properly. Been bringing in twice the clients Rebecca did. Firm's doing better without her. Update. The divorce is completely finalized. Rebecca tried to file for a modification of terms 3 months ago, claiming financial hardship. Judge denied it. Said she created her own hardship through criminal behavior. She's still at the diner. Saw her there when I stopped for coffee last month. She took my order, wouldn't make eye contact, left a normal tip and left. Wasn't trying to rub it in. Just wanted coffee. Grant's wedding announcement ran in the paper 2 weeks ago. Big society wedding. His parents are loaded. Rebecca wasn't invited. Heard she called his new wife's office trying to warn her about him. Security escorted her out of the building. The paralegal certification she was trying to get. Denied. State Bar flagged her application. Turns out getting disbarred makes it really hard to work in legal-adjacent fields. She's trying to get certified as a medical billing specialist now. Her apartment got broken into last month. Took her TV and laptop. Cops didn't recover anything. She posted about it on social media, asking for help replacing the stuff. Got 3 responses. Nobody donated. The class action lawsuit against her settled. She's paying monthly installments for the next 10 years. Most of her paycheck goes to that and rent. She's basically broke until she's 45. My girlfriend met her by accident at the grocery store. Rebecca tried to explain her side of the story. My girlfriend just walked away mid-sentence. Told me about it later and we laughed. No regrets about any of it. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. My lazy wife's father died and she inherited his house and $33 million. She kicked me out saying, "Find somewhere else to live or die. I don't care, you're useless now." Days later, the lawyer laughed. "Did you even read the will?" My wife went pale. Hey Reddit, my wife inherited a fortune from her father, kicked me out like yesterday's trash, then found out she just handed me everything. The meltdown was spectacular. Here's how it went down. I'm Kyle, 34, been working construction management for the last 12 years. Started as a framer making $12 an hour, worked my way up to estimating and project coordination. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that pays the bills and doesn't require pretending to be someone I'm not. My wife Vanessa never worked a day in her adult life, and I mean that literally. When we met at a friend's barbecue 9 years ago, she was 23 and taking time to figure out what she wanted to do. That figuring out phase somehow stretched into a full-time career of doing absolutely nothing productive. She'd wake up around 11, spend 2 hours on her phone in bed, then migrate to the couch for reality TV marathons. Her daily exercise consisted of walking from the bedroom to the kitchen to complain that I hadn't bought the right brand of yogurt, the wrong brand being whatever brand I'd actually purchased. Every morning I'd leave for work at 6, she'd still be asleep. Every evening I'd come home at 6, she'd be exactly where I'd left her that morning. Same spot on the couch, same pajamas, same vacant expression, while watching strangers renovate houses or compete for roses. "How was your day?" I'd ask, already knowing the answer. Exhausting. I had so much to do. The so much included watching 4 hours of reality television, scrolling through social media for 3 more hours, and maybe, if she was feeling particularly ambitious, running the dishwasher I'd loaded the night before. Her father, Walter, made his fortune in commercial real estate development. Started with a single office building in the 80s, turned it into an empire worth north of $30 million by the time he hit 70. The man understood business, property values, and apparently his daughter better than anyone gave him credit for. Vanessa grew up in that mansion on Ridgemont Hill, the kind of place with a circular driveway, columns that served no structural purpose, and enough square footage to house a small village. Her childhood was private schools, summer camps in Switzerland, and the general belief that money appeared magically whenever she wanted something. Walter paid for our wedding, bought us a house, and covered Vanessa's credit card bills for the first 5 years of our marriage. I tried refusing his help multiple times, but he'd just wave me off saying family took care of family. Should have realized he meant I was family, not necessarily his daughter. The thing about marrying someone who's never had to work for anything is they don't understand what work actually means. I'd come home after 10 hours on a job site, covered in drywall dust, and she'd be irritated that I was late for dinner. Dinner being leftover takeout from yesterday that she'd reheated poorly. "You're always working," she'd complain. Like my job was some hobby I chose, over spending quality time watching her scroll through social media. "Someone has to pay the mortgage," I'd reply, even though technically Walter had paid off the mortgage as a wedding gift. "My dad pays for everything anyway. Why do you even bother?" That sentence right there summed up Vanessa's entire worldview. Work was pointless because daddy had money. Effort was unnecessary because someone else would handle it. Responsibility was something other people dealt with. I remember this one time, about 3 years into our marriage, when our water heater broke. Not a huge emergency, but we had no hot water and it needed replacing. I came home from work planning to call a plumber, and Vanessa was having a full meltdown. "We've been without hot water for 6 hours," she screamed. 6 hours! This is unacceptable. Did you call anyone to fix it? That's your job. I don't know how to do that stuff. You call a plumber. That's literally it. You call a plumber. Well, I didn't know which one to call. The woman had a smartphone in her hand for 12 hours a day, but couldn't figure out how to search for local plumbers. I ended up calling 3 companies, getting quotes, scheduling the replacement, and taking time off work the next day to be there for the install. Vanessa's contribution was complaining that the new water heater was ugly and asking why I couldn't have gotten one that matched our laundry room aesthetic. For 7 years, I played the role of devoted husband, while she played the role of entitled princess waiting for her kingdom. Her friends were exactly like her. Women who'd never held jobs, living off family money, or their husbands' incomes. Spending their days at spin classes they complained about and brunches they Instagram storied. These women would come over for what Vanessa called wine afternoons, which meant 4 of them drinking 2 bottles of expensive stuff Walter had paid for while complaining about how hard their lives were. I'd come home to find them sprawled across my furniture, glasses everywhere, cheese plate demolished, discussing the exhausting challenge of choosing between 2 vacation destinations. "Kyle works in construction," Vanessa told her friend Brittany once, using the tone people reserve for discussing unfortunate medical conditions. "Oh," Brittany looked at me with pity. "That must be so hard on your body." "It's honest work," I replied. "Sure, but don't you want to do something more sophisticated?" Brittany's husband is in finance. Brittany's husband inherited his father's investment firm and had driven it into the ground twice before his family bailed him out. But sure, let's pretend sitting in an office gambling with other people's money is more sophisticated than building things that don't collapse. The only time Vanessa showed genuine enthusiasm was shopping. The woman could spend 4 hours comparing throw pillows and come home with 6 of them, each costing more than my weekly grocery budget. Our house looked like a furniture store showroom because she kept buying new stuff, getting bored, and buying more stuff. One month, I calculated she'd spent $7,000 on home decor, $7,000 on candles, vases, and decorative objects that served no purpose except filling space. When I mentioned this might be excessive, she looked at me like I'd suggested we live in a cave. "It's called having taste, Kyle. Some of us care about our living environment. I care about our living environment. That's why I fix things when they break and maintain the property. That's different. That's just basic maintenance. I'm talking about creating a space that reflects who we are. Who we are, apparently, was people who needed 17 decorative throw pillows and 4 different scented candle collections. When I suggested maybe she could get a job or volunteer somewhere, she looked at me like I'd suggested she join a cult. Why would I do that? We don't need the money. It's not about money, it's about having purpose. My purpose is managing our household. Managing our household meant texting me shopping lists and occasionally running the dishwasher. Meanwhile, I was doing the actual household management, paying bills, scheduling repairs, handling anything that required follow-through or basic competence. About 2 years ago, Walter started getting sick. Nothing dramatic at first, just the usual stuff that happens when you hit 75. Slowing down, forgetting things occasionally, needing help with tasks that used to be simple. His doctor diagnosed early-stage dementia along with the normal aging issues. Arthritis making his hands shake, blood pressure problems, the gradual shutdown of a body that had worked hard for 7 decades. Vanessa's response was to avoid him. Too stressful, she said. Too depressing. She couldn't handle seeing him decline. So guess who started spending weekends at Walter's place, helping him sort through business papers and making sure he actually ate proper meals? The first time I showed up, Walter was trying to make breakfast and had burned his toast so badly the smoke alarm was going off. He was standing in the kitchen, confused about why the alarm wouldn't stop, holding a spatula like it might have answers. "Walter, you okay?" I asked, opening windows to clear the smoke. "Kyle, what are you doing here?" He looked embarrassed. "I was just making breakfast." "How about I make breakfast and you tell me what you want?" We fell into this routine. I'd show up Saturday mornings with fresh ingredients from the grocery store, actual food, not the frozen meals he'd been surviving on, and we'd cook together. Well, I'd cook while he supervised and told me stories. Walter and I developed this relationship where I'd show up Saturday mornings with breakfast sandwiches from this diner he loved, and we'd sit in his study going through files or just talking. He told me stories about building his business, about the mistakes he'd made, about his regrets regarding how he'd raised Vanessa. The study was where Walter felt most comfortable, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, organized by subject, a massive oak desk that had been his father's, leather chairs worn soft from decades of use. He'd sit in his usual spot and talk for hours about the deals he'd made, the properties he'd developed, the risks that had paid off, and the ones that hadn't. Started with one building, he told me one Saturday. 8 units, half of them empty, in a neighborhood everyone said was going nowhere. Paid $90,000 for it back in 1983. Everyone thought I was insane. What made you buy it? The neighborhood was going nowhere because nobody was investing in it. I figured someone had to be first. Renovated those units, rented them at fair prices to decent people, and within 2 years the whole block started improving. Sold it for $200,000 and bought 3 more buildings. He had this way of explaining business that made sense. Not the corporate jargon stuff you hear in office buildings, but practical wisdom about seeing potential where others saw problems. Gave her too much, he admitted once, talking about Vanessa. Thought I was being a good father, providing everything she needed. Turns out I was just teaching her that she'd never have to earn anything. She's still young, I offered, though I didn't believe it. Maybe she'll grow out of it. Walter gave me this look, sad and knowing. Kyle, she's 31 years old. If she hasn't figured it out by now, she's not going to. He wasn't wrong. These conversations became the highlight of my week. Walter treated me like an equal, asked my opinion on business decisions, actually listened when I talked about work projects. It was the kind of respect I'd never gotten from Vanessa or her social circle. When Walter's condition deteriorated last year, requiring round-the-clock care, I was the one coordinating with doctors, setting up the hospital bed in his home office, making sure his medications were organized properly. Vanessa visited maybe twice in 6 months, always with some excuse about being too emotional or too busy. Too busy doing what? Scrolling through furniture websites? The hospice nurse, this kind woman named Patricia, pulled me aside one day and said Walter kept asking for his daughter. I'd call Vanessa. She'd promised to visit, then find some reason why she couldn't make it. Eventually, Patricia stopped asking about her. Your father-in-law is a good man, Patricia told me one afternoon while checking Walter's vitals. Not many people take care of their in-laws like you do. He's been better to me than my own family, I replied honestly. I can tell. He lights up when you walk in, asks about you all the time when you're not here. That hit me harder than expected. This man who barely knew me 8 years ago now considered me the closest thing to family he had left. Walter's final weeks were rough. The man who'd built an empire was reduced to struggling with basic tasks. His mind sharp, but his body failing. I'd sit with him for hours, sometimes reading the newspaper aloud, sometimes just keeping him company while he drifted in and out of sleep. The dementia got worse toward the end. Some days he'd think I was someone from his past, a business partner or old friend. Other days he was perfectly lucid, sharp as ever, talking about his plans for the estate and making sure his affairs were in order. One afternoon when he was having a good day, lucid and talkative, he grabbed my hand with surprising strength. You're a good man, Kyle. Better than this family deserves. I laughed it off, just trying to help out. No. His grip tightened. You've been more of a son to me than anyone. I want you to know that. At the time, I thought he was being sentimental. Old man reflecting on his life, appreciating the people who'd shown up. I had no idea what he'd actually planned. Walter passed on a Tuesday morning in March. Patricia called me at work, said it had been peaceful. He'd gone in his sleep. I left the job site immediately, drove to the house, sat with him for a while even though he was already gone. The room was quiet except for the machines they'd disconnected. He looked peaceful, finally free from the body that had been failing him for months. I sat there thinking about all those Saturday mornings, all those conversations, all the lessons he'd taught me about business and life and what actually mattered. Called Vanessa from Walter's study. Your dad died this morning. Silence for a beat then. Oh, okay. That's probably for the best. He was suffering. No tears, no emotion. Just clinical acknowledgement like I'd told her the cable bill was due. Are you coming over? I asked. What's the point? He's already dead. I hung up without responding. Spent another hour sitting with Walter before the funeral home came. Patricia showed up even though her shift had ended. Helped coordinate everything. Made sure the transition was handled with dignity. He was lucky to have you, she said as they wheeled him out. Didn't feel lucky. Felt empty. The man had become more of a father to me than my own dad, who I talked to maybe twice a year, and now he was gone. The funeral was small. Some business associates, a few distant relatives, neighbors who'd known Walter for decades. Vanessa showed up in a designer black dress that probably cost more than the casket, checked her phone during the service, left immediately after without speaking to anyone. I gave the eulogy, because nobody else volunteered. Talked about Walter's business acumen, his generosity, his quiet wisdom. Mentioned how he'd built an empire through hard work and smart decisions, how he'd always had time for people who mattered. Didn't mention that his own daughter couldn't be bothered to visit him while he was dying. The will reading was scheduled for the following Thursday. Walter's attorney, Philip Brennan, had been handling his affairs for 30 years, distinguished guy, probably pushing 70 himself, with the kind of calm authority that comes from dealing with wealthy people's drama for decades. We sat in his office, me, Vanessa, and her cousin Jennifer, who'd inherited Walter's collection of antique watches. The office had that old money smell, leather and wood polish, and expensive carpet trophy fish mounted on walls. Law degrees from schools I'd never be able to afford. Photos of Philip shaking hands with politicians and business leaders. Philip opened the will with standard legal language, then got to the bequests. Jennifer got the watches, various charities got donations totaling over $2 million. And then the big one. To my daughter, Vanessa Hayes Morrison, I leave my entire estate, including the property at 4127 Ridgemont Hill, all financial accounts, investment portfolios, and business holdings, with a current estimated value of $33 million. Vanessa didn't react, just sat there with this smug expression like she'd known all along. Philip continued reading specific account numbers, property descriptions, investment details. The list went on for 10 minutes. Real estate holdings across 3 states, stock portfolios diversified across multiple sectors, business interests in companies I'd never heard of. The sheer scope of Walter's wealth was staggering. I'll admit I zoned out during the legal specifics. Numbers, account information, property deeds. My brain couldn't process the amount of money being discussed. 33 million. That number didn't feel real. After the reading, Vanessa signed papers while I waited awkwardly, unsure if I was supposed to be there. Philip handed her a folder thick with documents, shook her hand, and told her to call if she had questions. In the car, Vanessa was already on her phone, texting her friends, 33 million, she said, not looking up. I mean, I knew Dad was wealthy, but this is insane. It's a lot of responsibility, I offered. She laughed. Responsibility? I'm hiring people for that. I'm going to travel, buy whatever I want, actually live my life. What about your dad's legacy? The foundation work he wanted to do? Kyle, he's dead. He doesn't care anymore. This money is mine now, and I'm going to enjoy it. That night, she ordered the most expensive takeout she could find. Some Japanese place that charged $40 per roll, opened a bottle of champagne that Walter had been saving for something special, and toasted to her financial freedom. I sat across from her, eating overpriced sushi that tasted like regular sushi, watching her celebrate her father's death like she'd won the lottery, which, I guess from her perspective, she had. We should probably meet with a financial advisor, I suggested. Make sure we're managing this properly. She rolled her eyes. We? Kyle, this is my inheritance. Right, but we're married. It affects both of us. It affects me. You're just along for the ride. The next few days were surreal. Vanessa started shopping like she was trying to single-handedly stimulate the economy. New car, a Range Rover that cost more than I'd made in 2 years. New furniture, she hired some designer who charged $10,000 just for the consultation. New wardrobe, I watched her credit card statement climb past $20,000 in clothing purchases. She hired an interior designer to redo the entire house we lived in, then decided she'd rather just move into Walter's mansion instead. Fired the designer, lost the deposit, didn't care because what was $15,000 when you had $33 million? We're moving to Ridgemont? I asked. I'm moving. You can come if you want. That sentence should have been my warning sign, but I was still processing everything. Walter's death, the inheritance, Vanessa's sudden shift into full-blown narcissism mode. Her friends started treating her differently. Suddenly, she was the center of every social gathering, the one everyone deferred to, the person whose opinion mattered most. Money does that. Changes how people see you, even when you haven't changed at all. Brittany, who used to subtly look down on Vanessa for not having her own wealth, was now asking for investment advice from a woman who'd never balanced a checkbook in her life. By the following Monday, she'd already moved most of her stuff to the mansion. I was still at our house, finishing up a project deadline, planning to move my things that weekend. Wednesday night, I came home from work to find all my belongings in garbage bags on the front porch. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, random items from my desk. Everything just dumped into black trash bags, like I was being evicted. There were 8 bags total. 8 garbage bags representing 7 years of marriage and 34 years of life. My work boots sticking out of one bag, dress shirts crumpled in another, family photos mixed with bathroom supplies in a third. I called her, "What's going on? Why is my stuff outside?" "Oh, right. I've been meaning to talk to you about that." Her voice was casual, like we were discussing dinner plans. "I'm moving on, Kyle. I don't need you anymore." "What do you mean you don't need me?" "I have money now. Real money. I don't need you to pretend to provide or whatever you thought you were doing. So you should probably find somewhere else to live." The words didn't register at first. 7 years of marriage, and she was kicking me out over the phone like I was a roommate she'd found on Craigslist. "Vanessa, we're married. Yeah, and we can deal with that later. Right now, I just need you gone. You're kind of killing my vibe." Killing her vibe. My existence was interfering with her vibes. So what? I'm just supposed to leave? That's generally how this works. Find somewhere else to live, or die. I honestly don't care which. She hung up. I stood on my own porch, staring at garbage bags full of my life, trying to understand what had just happened. My wife had inherited $33 million and decided I was disposable. Not worth keeping around, not worth basic courtesy, just immediately discarded like I'd never mattered at all. Had to laugh at the absurdity. Not a happy laugh, more like the kind of laugh you do when reality becomes so ridiculous your brain short circuits. Loaded the bags into my truck, drove around aimlessly for an hour, ended up at the Starlight Motel on Route 9. $45 a night, flickering neon sign where half the letters were burned out. Vending machines that only accepted exact change. The room smelled like industrial cleaner trying unsuccessfully to mask decades of questionable decisions. The bed had one of those thin bedspreads that's been washed so many times it's basically transparent. Wood paneling on the walls, water stains on the ceiling tiles, a bathroom the size of a closet with a shower that probably violated health codes. Sat on the bed with its thin comforter and questionable stains, staring at wood-paneled walls, thinking about how quickly everything had collapsed. This morning, I'd had a wife and a home. Tonight, I was living in a motel room that made prison cells look inviting. Vanessa texted around midnight, "BTW, I'm keeping the house. You can have your truck and whatever's in those bags. Consider it your settlement." My settlement. 7 years of marriage, and I was getting garbage bags and a 12-year-old truck with 140,000 miles on it. Spent the next few days in a fog, going through the motions at work, coming back to the motel, eating gas station sandwiches because I couldn't afford restaurants, trying to figure out what came next. Called a divorce attorney Friday afternoon, scheduled a consultation for the following week. That's when something Walter had said started bothering me. We'd been watching this old war movie about 6 months before he died, something with submarines and tense strategic decisions. During a commercial break, Walter had turned to me. "You're a good man, Kyle. Better than this family deserves." At the time, I'd assumed he meant I was treating Vanessa well despite her obvious flaws, or that I was helping him when his daughter couldn't be bothered. But the way he'd said it, the emphasis on this family, made me think there was something more. Walter was meticulous. The man had color-coded filing systems, organized his garage by tool type and size, planned everything down to which socks he'd wear on which days of the week. He wasn't the kind of person who'd leave $33 million to someone without considering all possible outcomes. So why would he leave everything to a daughter who'd ignored him, who'd never worked, who'd spent her entire life demonstrating zero responsibility or competence? The more I thought about it, the less it made sense. Sunday morning, I called Philip's office, got his voicemail, left a message explaining who I was, and that I had questions about Walter's estate. He called back within an hour. "Kyle Morrison?" His voice sounded surprised. "Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for over a week." "Trying to reach me? Why?" "Because you need to be involved in the estate settlement. Your wife said you'd moved out of state and wanted no contact regarding the inheritance." The pieces started clicking together. "She told you I'd moved?" "She said you'd relocated for work and weren't interested in the estate proceedings. I found it odd given how close you were with Walter, but she was quite insistent." "Philip, I'm living in a motel on Route 9. I haven't gone anywhere." Long pause. "I think you'd better come to my office. There's something you need to see." Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, put on my least wrinkled shirt, drove to Philip's office downtown. He was waiting with that thick folder from the will reading, plus another envelope I hadn't seen before. "Kyle." He shook my hand firmly. "I'm going to be direct with you. Your wife has been lying to me, and I suspect she's been lying to you too." He slid a document across his desk. It was Walter's will, but different from the version I'd heard at the reading. "This is the complete will. What I read last week was the first section, the standard bequests. There's a second section that only gets revealed under certain circumstances. My name was highlighted in yellow on page 4. Philip adjusted his glasses and read aloud. The bequest to my daughter, Vanessa Hayes Morrison, of my entire estate is conditional upon her treatment of her husband, Kyle Morrison, following my death. Should she fail to treat him with respect, dignity, and consideration befitting a spouse, her inheritance shall be immediately revoked and transferred in its entirety to Mr. Morrison. I stared at the words, reading them over and over, trying to make my brain accept what they meant. I don't understand. Why would he do this? Philip leaned back in his chair. Walter came to see me about 8 months before he died. Said he'd been watching how Vanessa treated you, how she took you for granted, how she showed no appreciation for your care and dedication. He was worried that once he was gone, she'd discard you. He was right about that. He was right about a lot of things. Walter told me, and I quote, "My daughter is arrogant enough to hang herself with her own rope. I'm just making sure the rope is clearly labeled." The condition had a 30-day window. If Vanessa treated me with basic decency for 30 days after inheriting, the money was hers. If she didn't, everything reverted to me. She kicked me out after 9 days, I said quietly, which means legally, the condition has been triggered by her own actions. Vanessa has forfeited her inheritance. The room felt like it was spinning. $33 million. A mansion. Investment portfolios. All of it because my wife couldn't pretend to be a decent human being for 1 month. What happens now? I asked. Philip started pulling out documents. Now we transfer everything to you. The house, the accounts, the business holdings, all of it. Can she fight this? She can try, but the will is extremely clear, and Walter made sure it was airtight. He even included documentation. He kept a journal of her behavior toward you, recorded phone calls where she dismissed you, text messages where she belittled your work. He built a case proving she didn't respect you. Walter had been gathering evidence for months, documenting every instance of Vanessa's cruelty and indifference, creating an undeniable record that she failed the basic condition of treating me like a human being. We spent 3 hours going through paperwork. Philip had already started the process after trying to reach me for a week, so most of the legal work was done. Just needed my signatures, my banking information, my agreement to accept the inheritance. One more thing, Philip said, pulling out a sealed envelope. Walter left this for you. Inside was a handwritten letter on Walter's personal stationery. Kyle, if you're reading this, it means Vanessa showed her true colors. I'm sorry you had to experience that, but I'm glad you'll be taken care of. You were more of a son to me than I deserved. Use this money wisely, live well, and don't feel guilty about any of it. She made her choice. This is your reward for being a decent human being when you had every reason not to be. The world needs more people like you, and fewer people like what I accidentally raised. Take care of yourself, Walter. I folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, tried not to get emotional in a lawyer's office. By late afternoon, the paperwork was signed. Philip made some calls. Within hours, every account Walter had owned was frozen, and being transferred to my name, Vanessa's credit cards stopped working. Her access to the mansion's accounts disappeared. Everything she thought was hers suddenly wasn't. Drove to a regular motel, not the Starlight, somewhere with clean sheets and water pressure that didn't feel like someone spitting on you from above. Sat on the bed, stared at my phone, tried to process that I'd gone from being homeless to being worth $33 million in one afternoon. Around 9 p.m., my phone started blowing up. Vanessa, of course. What did you do? My cards aren't working. The bank says my accounts are frozen. Answer me right now. Then voice messages, her voice getting progressively more panicked. Kyle, this isn't funny. Call me back. Something's wrong with the accounts. Did you do something? I swear if you're behind this, I'll destroy you. Ignored every message. Let her panic. Let her experience the same confusion and helplessness she'd put me through when she dumped my belongings on the porch. The next morning, drove to Ridgemont Hill. Philip had already sent notice that I was the legal owner, and security had been informed. The gate code worked when I punched it in, the massive iron gates swinging open like they were welcoming me home. The circular driveway looked exactly like I remembered from all those weekends helping Walter. The fountain still running, water cascading down 3 tiers of carved stone. The landscaping immaculate. Someone was still maintaining it, probably on autopilot contracts that Walter had set up years ago. Vanessa was on the front steps, phone pressed to her ear, screaming at someone. I don't care what your system says. I have millions. Check again. Hello? Parked right in front, stepped out of my truck that suddenly looked very out of place among all this wealth. She turned, saw me, froze mid-sentence. Kyle? What are you doing here? Coming home. She blinked rapidly, brain trying to process. What do you mean coming home? This is my house. Pulled out the folder Philip had given me, the new deed with my name on it. Handed it to her. She scanned the first page, confusion turning to concern. Flipped to the second, concern turning to fear. Started reading faster, hands beginning to shake. Color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. By the time she reached the condition clause, her legs were wobbling. This is fake, she whispered. Call Philip if you want. He'll confirm everything. You're lying. You're trying to steal my inheritance. Held up the keys Philip had given me. Heavy brass keys on a ring with Walter's initials. These are real. The transfer is real. You kicked me out 9 days after inheriting that violated the condition. Everything reverts to me. She sank onto the steps, the folder slipping from her hands, papers scattering across expensive marble like white leaves in wind. No, this can't be happening. Dad wouldn't do this to me. He did exactly this to you. He knew exactly who you were. She looked up, mascara starting to run, even though she hadn't been crying. Just the shock making her eyes water. I'm his daughter. I'm supposed to inherit. You were supposed to inherit if you treated me with basic human decency for 30 days. You couldn't make it 9. This isn't fair. The irony was perfect. The woman who told me to find somewhere else to die was now claiming life wasn't fair. You could have had everything, Vanessa. All you had to do was not be cruel for 1 month. Walter gave you every opportunity to be a decent person. She started scrolling through her phone frantically. I'm calling my lawyer. This is wrong. He can't just change his will like this. He didn't change his will. This was always the will. You just never bothered to read past the first section. Vanessa tried standing, wobbled, sat back down. Watched her face as reality set in. The mansion belonged to me. The accounts belonged to me. The money, the investments, the business holdings, all of it, because she'd told me to find somewhere else to die. What am I supposed to do? She asked, voice small for the first time in years. I don't know. Get a job, maybe? Find somewhere else to live? Recognition flashed in her eyes. You're quoting me. You told me to find somewhere else to live or die. So yeah, I'm quoting you. Consider it returned wisdom. She started crying for real then. Not grief crying or remorse crying. Angry crying. The kind of tears that come when someone who's never faced consequences suddenly has to face all of them at once. I'm your wife. You can't just take everything. I'm not taking anything your father gave it to me. You throwing me out just made it official. Stood there watching her fall apart on the steps of a mansion that used to be hers, feeling absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, no victory. Just emptiness where 7 years of marriage used to be. I'll fight this, she said between sobs. I'll sue you. I'll prove he wasn't mentally competent when he wrote this. He wrote it 8 months before he died. Medical records show he was completely sound. He recorded everything, Vanessa. Every mean comment, every dismissive text, every time you couldn't be bothered to visit him. He built a case proving you failed the condition. She looked up, understanding finally clicking. He was testing me? He was giving you a chance. You failed. Left her there on the steps, walked into the mansion like I owned it. Because I did. The place was exactly how Walter had kept it. Vanessa hadn't changed anything yet, probably too busy shopping to bother with actual decisions. His study still had his books organized by subject, business on the left, history in the middle, biographies on the right. His desk was clear except for a photo of him and his late wife on their wedding day. Sat in his leather chair, looked around at $33 million worth of life, tried to figure out what came next. Philip called that afternoon. I heard from Vanessa's attorney. They're requesting a meeting to discuss settlement options. She has nothing to settle with. I know. But they're going to try just want you prepared. The meeting happened 2 days later at Philip's office. Vanessa showed up with some attorneys she'd scraped together. Probably the first one who'd take her call without a retainer. Young guy, maybe 30, wearing a suit that was trying too hard. The kind of lawyer who advertises on bus benches. Her lawyer was clearly out of his depth. Started with aggressive posturing about undue influence and questionable testamentary capacity, terms he'd probably just learned last night. Philip let him talk for 5 minutes, then slid a folder across the table. This is Walter Hayes' medical evaluation from 2 weeks before he modified his will. Completely sound. This is the journal he kept documenting his daughter's treatment of her husband. This is testimony from the hospice nurse about who actually visited during his final months. This is Roy. Okay, we get it, the young lawyer interrupted. Do you? Because your client seems to think she has a case when she actually has nothing. We sat there in uncomfortable silence. Vanessa wouldn't look at me. just stared at the table, probably realizing her $33 million fantasy had evaporated like morning dew on hot pavement. What if we negotiate? Her lawyer tried. Split the estate 50-50? Philip didn't even dignify that with a response. Just stared until the lawyer squirmed in his cheap suit. Okay, what if... Your client violated a clearly stated condition, Philip said. The will is explicit. Her options are accept the outcome or waste money on a lawsuit she'll lose. Vanessa finally spoke. What about the house? Can I at least have the house we lived in together? The house Walter had bought us, paid off, and put in his name to avoid tax complications. That house. That property is part of the estate, Philip explained patiently. It belongs to Kyle now. So I get nothing? You get exactly what you told him to have, nothing. The meeting ended without resolution, because there was nothing to resolve. Vanessa had gambled her entire inheritance on me being too weak or too dependent to challenge her. She'd lost spectacularly. Filed for divorce the following week, Vanessa tried claiming she deserved spousal support, but Colorado is an equitable distribution state. Since the inheritance wasn't marital property, and she'd voluntarily ended the marriage by kicking me out, she had no claim to anything. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. 6 months of Vanessa fighting over every detail, trying to prove she deserved something, anything, from the wreckage of her own choices. Her lawyers kept trying different angles. Emotional distress, wrongful termination of marital benefits, claims that I'd manipulated Walter. All of it went nowhere because the evidence was overwhelming. Walter's journal had hundreds of entries documenting Vanessa's behavior. Phone recordings of her dismissing me. Text messages where she called me useless. Testimony from Patricia, the hospice nurse. Statements from neighbors who'd watched me care for Walter while Vanessa partied with her friends. She ended up moving in with her cousin Jennifer, the one who'd inherited the watch collection. Last I heard, she was working retail at a department store in the mall, dealing with the kind of customers who'd probably treated her like garbage when she was on the other side of the counter. The karmic justice was almost too perfect. Vanessa still sends messages occasionally, usually around holidays or when she needs money. Always some variation of, that inheritance should have been mine, or, you stole my father's legacy. Never respond. Nothing left to say to someone who thought love came with conditions, but inheritance didn't. Walter understood something most people don't. You can't teach humility by giving someone everything. You teach it by showing them exactly what they had and making them watch it disappear because of their own choices. He gave Vanessa $33 million. She chose cruelty over decency and lost everything. Meanwhile, I'm living in a mansion I never wanted, managing money I never expected, running a foundation honoring a man who was more of a father to me than my own. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.